I get the honor of introducing our next speaker. He's one of the most famous designers in the world, Neville Brody. Even though I don't have to, I am going to say a little bit about him. He first made his name as the creative director of The Face, one of the UK's most popular magazines, where he shattered the status quo with his inventive and utterly original work. He's run his London studio, Brody Associates, for over 3 decades and works with global clients such as Coca-Cola, BBC, Sony Music, Supreme, Christian Dior, The Times, Shiseido, and also creates custom, bespoke, beautiful typography. He was previously president of the D&AD. He is a professor of communication at the Royal College of Art and a royal designer for industry. Neville leads his practice with experimentation, exploration, and discovery, and has always been focused on education and how it can change to better support creative development and opportunity. Neville's going to present his work, and then I'm going to have a brief conversation with him after. If you want to send me questions on threads, please do, and I hope that I can include them. Please join me in welcoming the legendary Neville Brody to the AIGA stage.
Thanks, David. Interesting. Am I supposed to read these? I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. Someone's left their notes here. Hello, New York. Hello. Thank you. Let me try once more. Hello, New York. Good morning. Right. I'd had a full presentation written and prepared, and then I realized this morning that it was a bit rubbish. So I kind of rewrote it in the cab on the way over here. So let's see what happens. And the reason is that we're in the middle of a lot of challenges right now. I think this has probably been one of the most challenging times the world has lived through, for certain, and us as individuals have had to face. So I was going to talk a lot about the challenges, and then at about 14th Street, I thought of the word embrace. And I thought, well, what are the things we're supposed to be embracing? And I checked up the definition. Oh, it's louder if I talk down like this. And the definition, there's 3 definitions. One is to embrace means to include or contain something as a constituent part. That means we embrace something into ourselves. Embrace also means to accept a belief, a theory, or a change willingly and enthusiastically. And the top of the 3 is one that says to embrace means to hold someone closely in one's arms, especially as a sign of affection. And I think that actually we need to be embracing the word embrace. And I thought about the words I'd written and reflected them in a different way. So when we think about education, education is critically at the center of everything that we need to be doing right now. We need to be thinking about how do we transform the world by transforming people's minds, and that happens through education. And it's not just in universities, it's through every means we can find within society. Social media isn't really geared around education. It's not really geared around creating knowledge. It's about creating numbers and followers more than anything. But in order for us to change education, we need to think about the way we change the way we teach. So at the Royal College of Art, we tend to think about what our skills are going to need to be in the future. We want to transform the world by embracing everything. And what I mean by that is that we're no longer specialists, singular specialists. We're no longer the factory where we just put the wheels on the car, the Henry T. Ford model. We actually need to think about what are all the different constituent parts of messaging and experience and impact that we're trying to achieve. So we have to embrace every possibility. So I think specialism is over. We have to embrace our students on this journey. At the Royal College, we try and mix disciplines. We have coders sat next to animators. We have architects working with fashion designers. What comes out isn't determined by what one's skill is going in. So we're trying to embrace not knowing what the appropriate outcome is. So embracing the intention. What is the intent? What are we trying to do? What is the resource we have available? So how do we embrace a different way of engaging? AIGA, graphic arts, graphic artists. What is it beyond all of that? How do we prepare ourselves for a future that for the very first time we have absolutely no certainty about? So our students experiment. They try different things. They look at what they're trying to achieve. They find innovative ways of doing it. So we need to also embrace the new. How do we embrace things that are unfamiliar? How do we think about a solution that might be about performance, or it might be about letterpress, or it might be about flat poster printing, a blue elephant? These are all solutions that a student has come up with. And as tutors, it's not our role to impart knowledge anymore. Students know better than us where to source their information. Our role is to teach what to do with that information, how to manage and maximize the way of looking at knowledge, embracing the right questions to ask. So we encourage our students just to think outside the box. You know, what is the box there for? Can we go back one slide? Thank you. So Dave at the back. Thank you, Dave. I press a button here. Dave hears a buzz and a light, and then presses next slide. So I'm not pressing anything. And and it works really well in one direction, but then I have to tell Dave if I need to go back a slide. So thank you, Dave. You're an unsung hero here, and I will embrace you afterwards. So here, this is a real VR headset. It's made of cardboard and it's made of cheap local electronic wiring. This says, please touch me. You know, we have to think outside what is expected. I told Dave this would be fast. Thanks, Dave. Or can we go back a slide? Thank you. So this piece is kind of a modern way of thinking about interactivity. You put your finger in a loop and it picks up your heartbeat and then transforms that into banging this drum. And I work with something that I've been calling typographism. And it's come out of the idea that 100 years ago plus, we had graphic art and we embraced graphic art. In 1916, we then pretty much invented graphic design. 100 years later, we're now moving into a space that I call graphic engineering. And it's pretty much that most of our world has to be built, it's engineered, it runs smoothly. And in that world, graphic design is seen as friction. And I think we have to embrace that friction. I think we have to make things difficult for people. I think we have to use these platforms as ways of making people think and making them think differently about the stuff that they're experiencing every day. Again, coming back to that idea about education. This is a piece of work I did when I was a student. This is 1978, so we're talking about 45 years ago. And at that time, I was embracing history, the whole history of communication and graphic design. And I was thinking at the time, well, if Rodchenko was here today, or Lazitsky, what would they be doing? How would they be thinking about these new ideas, and what would they be doing with the technology? And it's quite mad that this is 45 years ago and actually looks fairly contemporary. I'm not sure how much has changed in those 45 years. And the one big thing was the idea of embracing technology. When the camera was invented, it liberated painters to be able to do more than just make portraits or record reality. It allowed them to not only then move into more fantastical spaces, but allowed them to pose questions about what it means to be a human being. And abstract art was born. We had Impressionism, etc. And if you look at the last 100 years, these advents and invents of communication have really changed what we do. And at each major technical revolution, we launch into a new cultural space. So the PC, when that arrived, we thought, here's a great tool, and it allowed us to change the way we produce things. We didn't realize at the time that that tool then would also be the object where we received things. So we could start to broadcast and receive, and then it ended up as this mobile phone. And I love the fact that I still have a button here and Dave presses next. So it's all of these spaces. We will embrace AI. There is no doubt about that. We cannot fight it, we cannot resist it. We have to look at it and think, how can we make this work to our benefit? It's an unknown, but we have to jump in. I remember when the Apple Mac first launched, other designers were saying to me, it's a fad, it will go away, I will never touch one. Obviously that turned out to be true. So the London College of Printing, again, this is 1978, screen printing, Letraset. I mean, what a revolution Letraset was. And then photocopying. We could make fanzines. We could photocopy fanzines and then distribute them. Making stuff by hand. I think embracing handmade stuff, embracing physicality as well as digitality is critically important. This is a record cover I did in 1981, I guess. And I'm not going to keep saying the dates on everything, but I think it's not always about the new. We have to embrace everything that came before it and see what we can learn and apply from there. And at that time, everything was hand-drawn. I couldn't make metal fonts. There was no way. But with tracing paper, with graph paper, with pen and ink, spending all night making these hand-drawn fonts was a revolution. We could then photocopy these, cut out individual letters, make hand-assembled headlines. That's me, sorry guys. But I embraced myself as a young man. So. I used to embrace smoking as well, but that's another story. So we'd be up all night, hand-assembling. Sorry, Dave, I'd press next. Were you laughing? Thanks. Every headline was hand-drawn or hand-assembled. And in the face, we had 5 days, and we had to do everything, including commission the next issue in those 5 days, and draw each headline by hand. And then it led to things like this. So this was, again, early 80s, and it's what I call proto-digital. It sort of looks like the style that came with digital, but this was entirely done physically. And in the studio, we embrace ambiguity. Ambiguity is quite critical because at the edge of a meaning can come other meanings. And we always see our relationship with the viewer and the user as something that's quite flowing and fluid. And like poetry or jazz, we are putting a not fully formed thing out, and then the viewer or user or reader will then complete that. So it's a dynamic, open-ended process. And if you fix everything, like a lot of our social media spaces and internet right now, if you fix everything, possibilities cannot happen. But experimenting with the edge, where something isn't necessarily predictable anymore, is where new things happen. We need to welcome mutations. We need to think about reinterpretation, so looking at the sculptural form of lettering all the time. What else can we bring in? What else do these shapes mean? Letter forms themselves have multiple meanings, not just the words that we're saying, but what are those other emotions that come from the shape of that lettering? So we embrace, again, ambiguity, uncertainty, because out of that comes new possibility and diversity. Here, it was Plus 81 was the name of the magazine. We were asked to do a cover, and we realized that just by turning the logo 90 degrees, we had a face. So sometimes we don't have to do anything. We just have to work deeper inside what's going on. And we embrace accidents. We were pushing, this is a bit early on in Mac technology, but we were pushing 3D software to the point where it would break. Because when something breaks, something new happens. And out of this, we then formed a way of thinking about design, graphics, possibility, visuals, where it ended up here, the cover of the V&A magazine on postmodernism, or here, this is the Issey Miyake Tribeca store in Lower Manhattan. And we then started to think about fluidity, and we wrote software, coding software, that then brought fluidity to the digital space. We need to see this space as unfixed. We need to embrace its possibility as an unpredictable space. We need to then let it be free and bring that kind of tactile quality to what we're experiencing. At the moment, it's gridded, it's gridlock, and we need to break out of the gridlock and find ways of smashing the rules. This was, again, early 90s, part of Fuse. Fuse was an experiment we did with language. Language is a contract between numbers of parties that then state that this has a certain meaning, but in that process, it's also a limitation. So can we describe and invent new typefaces? So can we embrace new ways of talking to each other? Because a lot of the current ones aren't working that well. Can we embrace editorial? In my early days designing magazines, we were always talking about word and image in relation to each other, not just in boxes. Most of the internet that we're looking at right now looks like an office building from the outside with square windows, and all you can do is some performance in those windows. Maybe change the curtains or put Happy New Year or something that is severely restricted. So how can we bring back editorial drama? How can we bring back the fact that you need to express content, not just deliver content? So here in a magazine, and magazines do tend to be finding a new kind of place in culture, but here in magazines, we could break grids. We were free from that mechanical engineering restriction, coming back to the idea that, as I said, can you go back a slide? Sorry, Dave, I think I double pressed. Oh, no, I didn't. Leave it. It's good. Thank you. I just remembered I changed the order in the cab. So here we created a column width which was narrower than the headline, and it was forcing new things to happen. It was forcing poetry to come out of new possibilities that were coming from restriction, as a thing William Burroughs used to employ a lot in his writing process. How can we bring back, it's not even about word and image. Today it's about image and word. It's about an image which is iconic, fleeting. It's on the screen for seconds, and the words are there just to support that image. How can we break that process? How can we build better time? Using white space to create a sense of oppression, which was what this article was about, living in the 80s. And here is the opposite, and here is the oppressor. And we've, as I said, we've shifted from graphic art to graphic design to graphic engineering, plus some graphic art. And the way we approach things is different. Brands are no longer about logos. That is over. I mean, yes, it's about an icon in social media, but it's not about logos anymore. It's about content. Brands have become storytellers. How do they tell their stories? What are the components? How can we embrace that as a way of bringing in personality, life, and engagement? Of course, you know, this is familiar. Here we have the classic brand. We have the bottle, we have the color, we have the script, and that is almost the origination of modern branding. We did this, and it ended up on the canteen wall in Atlanta, in the headquarters. And we were asked to bring in our thinking around creating a typeface for Coca-Cola. And what we wanted to do was embrace their history. So we spent 3 days in their archives, and we embraced details from their history and managed to bring those into the typeface. And the idea was that the typeface would be relatively invisible and it would function at a small size, but as soon as you start using it in display, it had a Coca-Cola voice, an Americana voice. So we took all of these details, started to apply them to a design process. So what we're talking about here is the DNA, the voices in the DNA. The round circles, we repeated that a lot in the text design. And then you end up with this. You end up with it being applied here, invisible, and here it starts to become associated. But it's not about something fixed and monolithic. It's not the old IBM story anymore. It's something much more flowing. Samsung, when they came to us, had a number of different divisions and activities, and they wanted to find a way to create a singular experience. So we started off building their new icon design system. This is, oh my God, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. In digital terms, that's about 100 years, I think. And we created an easy to understand transversal icon system that cut across all of their products. So a user or a customer wouldn't be confused by all of these different spaces anymore, because it was all starting to speak one voice and it was scalable. And to do that, we also had to build a typeface that would work incredibly small on screen and would scale up with personality and would cross all different territories. So it's embracing this idea that it's one world. There's a kind of entropy out there where complexity devolves into its most simple form. That's the nature of the universe. Heat dissipates. We end up with a very granular space. And in that granular space, you have things called condensation symbols. A condensation symbol is where a complex idea has been reduced to 3 letters or 3 words. It's Make America Great Again, or it's Brexit, or Me Too, or Just Do It. These are known as condensation symbols, but all of culture becomes condensation symbols. And in that space, it becomes dualistic. It becomes white versus black. It becomes left versus right. It becomes me versus you. And we're ending up with this dualistic system. But within all of that, we need to find a way of creating something which is not more singular, but certainly something that crosses boundaries. And what we did with the Samsung font is develop a number of different characteristics that allowed a number of different scripts to be designed in an authentic, local way, but that had a global feeling. And that meant starting with the local. So we looked at characteristics that could be shared across these different typefaces, in some cases unique qualities, in many cases comparable qualities. We ended up with something like this. This is a snapshot. We worked with local designers. We didn't want to impose a Latin approach onto the design, where curves and lines join, where spurs happen. I don't mean Tottenham, yes. Where right angles cut curves at tangents. And then here it is again, invisible, but it works. So a brand comes further down in its process, and what we're doing now is creating systems and components. CD, Christian Dior, the brief was to make it elegant, but you could read it one way up and the other way up, so you don't know when it's going to be upside down or not upside down. So it had to be a single piece, it had to be scalable, and it had to be an object. So sometimes a whole brand can be reduced down to a simple device. Finally, in this is supreme, how to create a language which is political, at its root? And how can you be political and do something which is design at its root? Finally, I'd like you all to embrace my new book. It's taken 6 years of lunacy, 30 years of work, an amazing foreword by our young friend Steve, who was here a couple of minutes ago. In here, we're embracing difficulty. There's a lot of work on Fuse, on the Anti-Design Festival. I'm embracing signing some upstairs afterwards. And I'm embracing the clock, from which I've run a little bit over. But the final message is we need to embrace each other. And we need to embrace each other across the divides. The divides are getting deeper. We will blow up this planet if we don't figure out a way of respecting each other's identities, positions, and building bridges, not digging trenches. So on that note, I embrace all of you, and thank you for being here.
Now I get to ask you some questions. I have a couple of my own, and we've gotten some from the audience. How do you view your early work now?
It's funny. I mean, coming back to that embrace thing, I'd sort of rejected it, you know, because you see your work as something that's progressive. I started here because I didn't know much, and then I tried these things, I took risks, and then you know more and more and more, and you need to think less, and you can experiment more. But looking back at some of that early stuff was so refreshing, actually.
Well, for you it is.
Oh, for you it isn't?
No,
Okay.
I'm humiliated when I look at my work from the 80s.
Well, embrace. That would change, Debbie. Or have Steve write about it.
Oh, no. We want to just keep it hidden forever. How do you know when to pursue one of the accidents that you encounter, or whether to discard them?
You never know. It's not like buying something in a store and it's horrible and you put it in the wardrobe because you think you might wear it later. It's more just understanding the potential that something has. Is it fresh? Does it change potentially the way we communicate and think? Is it a valuable tool? Things breaking can be so useful.
We have a lot of questions that have come in from the audience, so I feel like it's only fair to ask you some of those. This is from Kenneth Fitzgerald. Hi, Kenneth. As an educator, do you have confidence you will recognize the next big thing if it's at odds with how you think about design? And if yes, why?
There is no next big thing.
There is no next big thing? Talk more about that.
I mean, there is technology, but how we respond is how we define ourselves. You know, it's not something that's going to happen to us, it's going to happen because of us. And, you know, graphic design is in a really challenging place right now, as we know. The majority of communication out there is, as I said, sees graphic design as friction. It gets in the way of the user journey. Well, you know, what they're looking for is a smooth journey where people are going to click something. So that's the next big thing, and we're living it. But our role is, how do we respond to that? How do we create difficulty, friction, and engagement? So, yes and no.
Okay. This is from Jessica Desio. Hi, Jessica. How do new brands tell a story without having a rich and long design heritage like Coca-Cola, Samsung, and Christian Dior?
They invent them.
They invent them?
Unfortunately.
Takes a lot of imagination.
Yes, but a lot of them succeed.
This is a question from Adrian Creates. Hi, Adrian. You mentioned designers having to embrace AI instead of ignoring it and calling it a fad. How are you personally embracing AI into your work, or plan on embracing it if you have not yet?
Well, two ways. One, we are using it as a production tool. It's incredibly useful at blowing up really shit small pictures and making them really big, for instance. I was talking with the guys at Google yesterday, and I said, why are we designing fonts? Let's just embed each font with AI, and it'll change the design on the fly, depending on who's creating a piece or who's looking at a piece. So, but that's fantasy. No, we are going to use it. I want to make my 4th book just done by AI.
So are you excited about it? Are you afraid of it, or both?
Yeah, both.
Both?
Both, yeah.
What are you most afraid of?
I'm afraid of AI taking all the decisions away from us, more than anything. So how do we balance that? How do we make sure that we are not being controlled and that we still have that agency?
I have 2 more questions. This is from Mara W. 1999. Hello, Mara. What advice would you give a new person starting out in this field? What kinds of experience might be most helpful?
See, so you're 24 then?
Right? Yeah. Oh, God. Babies.
Just go out and challenge everything out there. I know it's tough, but there's a message also to graphic engineers, which they need to employ creativity in the process. You know, companies should be bringing graphic designers in as part of this building process. So how do we educate industry to see our new roles?
This might be my favorite question. I was saving it for last. It's from Christo Allegra. Hi, Christo. Favorite album cover?
Oh my good God. God, how do you even answer that? And Beatles double white, of course.
Well, actually, you know, I was thinking about this question and I realized they didn't actually specify whether it's favorite album cover that you've designed yourself or favorite album cover of all time.
I'm sticking with someone else's.
No, let's do both.
No. Thank you, Debbie.
Neville Brody. All right, we are finished with our morning general sessions. We have a little bit of a break now, and then there are breakout groups, there are book signings, there's lunch, there's so much happening. I will see you back here at 3 o'clock for our afternoon session. Enjoy the rest of the morning.